This video is going to be about Woolton Quarry, but before we go to Quarry Street, I just wanted to start the video here on School Lane, because after a little bit of research I found that there was a quarry on this road too. Now I'm not quite sure where it is, and it's obviously long gone, but there's a lot of sandstone in this area. Maybe the sandstone that was used came from the quarry that was on School Lane. Who knows? Quarrying in Woolton had taken place in a number of locations: School Lane, where we've just been, Quarry Street and Woolton Hill Road, which I think can be accessed from where we are now in Reynolds Park, but it's gated and you're not supposed to climb over the wall. The sandstone which was quarried in the various outlets of Woolton were used to build Woolton's finest buildings. The quarries were once owned by well-known businessmen such as James Gore, John Greenhoff and James Rose, and they had a reputation for quality that went back generations. Stone that can be found in Speke Hall, Woolton Hall, St Mary's Hall, Quarry Street Mechanics Institution, all these places were built with stone that was quarried in Woolton. There are many sandstone buildings and sandstone walls in Woolton and the surrounding areas, Gattaca, Hunts Cross, and it's a commodity which really defines the area. There were a few quarries in Liverpool digging sandstone. One notably was in Wavertree. But the quarry which we're going to discuss and look at in this video is the one which is in Quarry Street in Woolton Village. Quarry Street has featured in my last two videos, and people around there are now starting to say hello to me. I've spent that much time there in the last few weeks. Anyway, let's say goodbye to Reynolds Park and take a walk to Woolton Village and have a walk along Quarry Street. As I said, the sandstone in Woolton was used to build a lot of the buildings that you see and a lot of the walls which line many of the roads. But the sandstone from the quarry in Quarry Street was also used to build Liverpool's Anglican Cathedral. The cathedral was designed by Giles Gilbert Scott, soon to become Sir Giles Gilbert Scott. He designed it when he was 22 and building was commenced in 1903. Now, if you don't know what the Liverpool Anglican Cathedral looks like, this is a photograph I took around about 2 years ago. The cathedral on the right hand side and the building on the left is called the Oratory, which predates the cathedral by quite a few years, I think. The cathedral could have looked like this. I think this is Giles Gilbert Scott's first impression of the cathedral he wanted to build, but it was later changed to the one that we all know and love today. Several sites had been tested for suitable sandstone, and Woolton was chosen because it had the best. The finest layers, up to 3 or 4 feet thick, were found in the lower beds. A lot of the surface stone, being of poorer quality, known as spoil, was crushed and used as aggregate. Some of the spoil was used to level off Quarry Street and some for the levelling of the ground when Menlove Avenue was laid. The north and south quarries are divided by a footpath known as Mill Stile, and we're going to take a look at that and also take a walk along it later. And these are the cottages that were mentioned in the last two videos, and the quarry is on the opposite side of the street here. The Marquis of Salisbury owned the quarry sites, and he gifted the freehold of the 6.5 acre site to the Cathedral Committee in 1934 to ensure that there was adequate supply of sandstone for the cathedral. This is the site of the southern quarry, and it's a new housing estate which is called the Old Quarry. In 1984, planning permission was granted for this road and 53 dwellings, and also permission was granted for phase 2, but that didn't start until around about 1990, I think. So these houses, I think, date between 1984 and the early 1990s. I might be wrong there. I didn't take a great deal of notice back then, but that's the dates given on Wikipedia. So you can see the sandstone here. I'm going to take a right turn here and have a look down the road, and this would have been the quarry. I'm not sure if this is the same view, because this could well be the North Quarry, but it looks pretty similar to where we've just been standing, and this would have been the quarry in its working days. And this is a more recent photograph of the quarry and its working days. You can see its age by the houses that we've just shown, and how deep the quarry is in relation to the surrounding area. The South Quarry has had a variety of uses over the years, because the level of the quarry had been taken to more than 30 feet below street level. It started being used as a refuge tip as far back as the 1920s. Eventually it was filled and the site was landscaped and laid out as an ornamental flower garden. By the late 1960s, possibly even the late 1950s, sections of the South Quarry, fronting onto Quarry Street, were leased as a coal yard to Wilf Radcliffe. It was also leased to a timber and scaffolding merchants called Richardson's and a haulage company called George Ridings. To the rear of these, the quarry was also used as a reception area for the storage of worn and used tyres. Now these tyres were very often set on fire, and it's said that the smoke from these fires would rise possibly 100 feet or more into the air. There was a particularly bad fire in the 1970s and one in the early 1980s, I believe, and these led to complaints from local residents that the council should do something with the South Quarry, and this led to the housing estate being built, which we've just seen. So we're back on Quarry Street now, and we're going to take a walk to the North Quarry. Quarrying had commenced north of Mill Stile before 1870, and it was from here, from 1905, that excavations of stone for the Anglican Cathedral took place by the firm of Morrisons and Sons. Morrisons and Sons were based in Wavertree, and they had been awarded the contract for building the substructure of the cathedral, and later they were awarded the contract for building the Lady Chapel. Stone was transported from the quarry to the cathedral site by teams of 6-horse lorries. That's a lorry drawn by 6 horses, and a guy called Martin Swanwick, a carter, is credited with taking the first load of stone to the cathedral site. These horse-drawn lorries were later replaced by steam wagons, and then later by diesel engine vehicles that we know today. A lot of the early work on the cathedral was done by steam-driven equipment, and in the photograph here, these are steam cranes lifting the sandstone into place. By the autumn of 1978, quarry workers here at the North Quarry were informed that the cathedral was nearing completion, and only a small workforce was retained until the Easter of 1979. So we're just coming up to the North Quarry now, this turning on the right, and just before it is the entrance to Mill Stile. Those steps there will take us across the quarry to the other end, which is in Church Road. So this is the North Quarry, and this is the sandstone wall upon which Mill Stile is built. It was estimated that 50,000 cubic metres of tipping would be needed to bring the level back up to what's thought to be general floor level. In total, the North Quarry had produced over 95% of the stone used in the cathedral's construction. The other 5% used for the interior being a mixture of Rainhill and Runcorn sandstone. Prior to the final closure of the quarry, a search team from Catherine's College, now called Hope University College on Taggart Avenue, Liverpool, carried out a site report on both quarries, which they completed by 1978. In 1979, the North Quarry commenced being used as a refuge tip for inert waste and officially closed in 1983. Planning permission was granted for 22 bungalows in 1985. Work commenced in 1986. A further planning application was submitted for a block of 18 flats to be erected at the northern end of the quarry, which was named Stonemason's Court. Clay Cross Road was completed in 1997. The completion of Stonemason's Court not only completed both quarries as residential housing estates, it also marked the end of an era for the quarries which had, for over 100 years, supplied stone for some of Woolton's finest houses and a quite magnificent cathedral. So this wall on our left-hand side is Mill Stile, and when we get back onto Quarry Street, just at the end here, we're going to take a walk along Mill Stile to Church Road. It seems a long time ago now since I made my video about Woolton Village. I began filming it in the August of 2019, and I just wanted to document what I thought was one of the nicest areas in Liverpool. I'm pretty sure that in that video I walked along Mill Stile, so it's something like 4 years now since I've done this walk, and it looks pretty much the same. I don't know what you could actually change about it. It's a very narrow pathway, and I think once it was lined on both sides by sandstone, and as years have gone by, certain areas have been changed. You can't help but notice the guardrails above. I guess these are to stop people throwing things over the sandstone wall and landing on property below, or landing on people walking by at ground level, or perhaps they're to stop people with suicidal tendencies from climbing on the wall and diving head first into the ground below, or perhaps it's a mixture of both. Now at the end of this wall here we come across a playing field on the right hand side, but further to the right, which we can't see here, is some of the original wasteland, which would have been part of the original quarry, which has trees growing on it now. And I think this may be the piece of sandstone which was jutting out when we filmed the South Quarry and the houses there now. But this is one of the deviations away from both sides of this pathway being lined with sandstone walls. Some parts have been changed over the years on the right hand side. So we're coming to the end of the little jaunt across the top of the quarry, and very soon we'll be coming out onto what is now a housing estate. Now I have a feeling that back in time, maybe to the turn of the century, the early 1900s, that there would have been a windmill in this area, possibly somewhere near this housing estate. Certainly it was behind a sandstone wall, and it was north of St. Peter's Church. And there's a sign for mill style, and it's Liverpool 25 postcode. And this area here now is called New Mill Style. And there's a rather grand house on the right hand side here. Just going to have a quick look at it. And there we go. Very nice. So we're back on Church Road now, and in this direction is village itself, and to our left would be Reynolds Park. Okay, thank you for watching, and we'll catch up soon.